Hi, I'm here to show you guys how to make a collagraph. So a collagraph is a form of printmaking where you take many different materials, a lot of found objects, maybe like newspaper, or I have old greeting cards, or different kinds of things. Like I have this netting that came from oranges, I have cupcake wrappers, I have tin foil, I have string, all different kinds of things that you'll see that we can use. So what you would do is you would gather things from your house that you can use. You want to think about things that have texture, and you want to think about things that are all about the same level. So for example, my string might be a similar level to this, this netting that I'm going to be using. If you have things that are too high and too low compared to each other on your collagraph plate, what's going to happen is when you run them through the press, it's not going to give even pressure between all the different parts of your print. So I'm going to show you how to make the collagraph right now. I'm going to just put this video down here. Let's see if it stays. It's not working. There we go. So let me see if I can get it to work. Okay, so these are all these different materials that I was telling you about. So I'm going to make mine in the shape of a circle, but you can make yours in however you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an upside down bowl, and I'm going to trace a circle around it with a marker. Then when I release the bowl, what will happen is I'll have, of course, a circle on my sturdy base that I'm going to be using for my collagraph. Now I want a sturdy base because I want my materials that I use to be able to not sink the paper. So for example, if I had used paper and I put a lot of heavy things on it, it might not stay nice and straight. So I need a really sturdy base for that. So here I am cutting my circle out of cardboard. This is just something that I had left over from some of the packages that I had delivered. So here's my collagraph base, and then on top of this I have some glue that I can put on. I have my scissors, of course, and I have all different kinds of materials that I can use to work on top of this plate. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide what I want my design to look like. I think I'm going to do a pretty abstract design, just kind of squishing around textures, crumpling things. What I want to do is I want to have texture in here, but you guys can really work with whatever you want. So if, let's say you were going to make a fish, what you would first do is you would draw a fish, let's say, on here. So you would draw, you know, whatever you want your fish to look like, and then you would start cutting materials to go on top and filling that in. Like I said, for me, I think I'm just going to kind of fill in however I feel like filling in abstractly. So I'm going to start by putting some glue on in a spot where I want to fill in. And I'm going to take my string, and I'm going to show you a couple different techniques with the string. So what I may want to do to start right here is I'm going to make a swirl. So I'm going to take my string and I'm going to stick it on top of the glue into a swirl shape. I might kind of leave some space, or if you want to get really tight, you can. All of this texture will show up in your collagraph print when you run it through the press. Of course, you guys aren't going to be running it through the press. You're going to be doing something called a rubbing, so that you can get all of your textures to show up. I'll show you guys that later. Okay, so this is the start of my collagraph print. It's one way for me to have textures in there. So I have this other fat string that I'm going to add on here. Maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bring it across the whole plate so that I can get some variety in here. So think about the elements of art and the principles of design as you're working here. All right, so here I go. So here's my plate so far. As I said, I'm doing an abstract design. So here I have some other texture. I have some sandpaper. So maybe what I'll do in here is, speaking of that fish theme, what I'll do is I'll create some little fish that I can put around it. Now this newspaper, when I ink it up, is going to give like a nice texture in there. So I'm just going to kind of wiggle it on the glue. and put it down as if these fish are getting stuck in these nets. So I'm going to create a bigger one so I can get a big balance of different shapes in here. And I'm going to glue and put that down. So maybe I'll have these fish kind of swirling out. So here I have different size that I'm working with. So I want to show you a way that you can add this texture. One thing I did here was I have tin foil. The tin foil you can kind of crinkle up, but again, you don't want to make it too high. You want to keep it about the same height as the different kinds of materials that you're working with. So you can see that they're all about the same height. But you can crinkle up the newspaper and put it down, and then imagine when you ink this up with your brayer, imagine that it would only hit certain spots. So that is where you would get all of that texture from when you're inking. So I'm gonna put that down. Let's see. I'm gonna kind of wiggle it around here. All right, and I want to stop things at the edge of my plate, of course, because I don't want them to come too far off. Again, here I have something that's textured, but it was already kind of set that way. So I'm gonna let that lay down as a big spot right over here. And then I'll just cut off any extra. And I kind of like these missing spots because it gives a variety in what I'm doing here. I even might put some of this on top of what's already here, because that'll give a variety from here to here. And then I'll just kind of cut around here, and I'll save that for later. So you can see the plates coming along. I brought in some sprinkles, and so I think I'm going to take some of these everyday items and I'm going to add a little bit more texture. Maybe I'll even put a little bit in there. I'm going to take some of these sprinkles, and I'm just gonna see if they can pretty much sit in here as I'm working and dry, and then I'll just like glitter, turn it upside down later, and get rid of any extras. All right, so we have a mess going here. All right, these cupcake wrappers are another way that I felt like I could add texture. Now this of course would flatten out over time, but again, I could crinkle, I could fold. There are lots of ways that you can show texture here. So I'm gonna kind of fold this and then fan it out around so that I can have some texture going in that way. And let's see, I have some area here. So I'm gonna fill that in, and I'm gonna add a little bit of texture here. I'm gonna press down. All right, and then lastly, I have two more items that I had brought out here. I have some masking tape, or actually duct tape. I'm gonna kind of rip this because then I get some nice edges to it that are a little bit more uneven. So I'm gonna take this, and then I'm just going to put this in some spots that will kind of make a smooth texture compared to all of these bumpy textures that I have here. So let's see. All right, so I'm gonna wrap that around. It's also kind of helping to keep my whole thing together since it's not fully glued down. So let's just say that I'm finished with my plate. I'm just gonna set it aside and I'm gonna let it dry, and then I'm gonna show you guys another video on how to ink your plate and run it through the press. That way you're gonna see all of these textures, and they're going to end up being on your paper when you pull your print. All right. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you guys next time when we start to print, okay? See you guys soon. Hope all is well.